Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and we're continuing the tour around and recapping the draft, and we got to talk about the Houston Texans, who definitely made one of the biggest splashes in the first round in this year's draft. I brought in Mr. AJ Jones, the lunch break. Mr. AJ Jones, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How about you? What's happening?
I'm doing great. We're going to get to talking about the Houston Texans and all their very good moves, I would say. We're going to get to those in a second. But like we do with every episode, how we open up the Get It Off Your Chest segment. And, of course, like I mentioned on the previous episode, we can talk about anything. In this episode, we're talking about basketball again. Now, the All-NBA teams were released, and two particular Boston Celtics made it. That would be Jason Tatum making first team and Jaylen Brown making the second team. Now, with that happening, both are now eligible for the Supermax. Now, let me give you the numbers for these Supermaxes that they're eligible for. Now, Jaylen Brown is eligible for 5 years and $295 million. That's the extension, y'all, not just the contract. That's the extension to being Boston. And Jason Tatum, a little bit more money, 5 years, $318 million. Combined, that would be $613 million to commit to two players.
Yep.
Now, let me give you a few numbers. Salary cap. Salary cap for 2023-2024 is $134 million. $162 million is the luxury tax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do those two numbers, now I know those two numbers are not going to kick in like immediately, but I know these two are ending up to, going to be up for a contract extension, and then it'll kick in like 1 or 2 years. Even at that, do you see it going up a level of 300 to 300 million in terms of the salary cap? I know I don't. So in my opinion, I think they should probably prepare for one of them to be gone. It just is what it is. And I actually put this out on Twitter. Actually, it said, hey, it's going to be interesting to see where one of them goes. I literally had people fighting me saying that they should pay both of them and work everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before the show started, me and AJ were talking about a few things, and, the people that were saying you should pay both of them and work everything out. Now, they aren't paying the majority of the money now. They're paying them a good bit of the money now.
Right.
But they're struggling with the Philadelphia 76ers with James Harden that's not necessarily a guy that's at the peak of his powers, and the MVP in Joel Embiid. So what makes you think that if you pay both of these guys that you can basically just put anybody out there, and you bring in the managers of the team, the janitors, you can bring out the people at the concession stand, and they can be teammates and they can win a championship?
Right.
It doesn't work that way. In my opinion, that would not be a good thing. So I understand people want to keep this duo together, but I think eventually, financially, the Celtics are going to have to make a decision. It's going to be something that people are not going to like, but you're just going to have to understand. Those are just the breaks. That's what do you think, AJ?
Well, I'll say this. They're going to have to move one of the two, because if I'm either one of them, I ain't going nowhere, because those bird rights don't go with me. I don't get the Supermax deal if I just go with another team. So you're going to have to trade me. You're going to have to find a way to move me and that team. And I don't know if they have no trade clauses. I know Harden had one when he was here. That team would have to be willing to pay me something comparable, as close as they can get, to what I'm walking away from to be moved. So Boston put themselves in this position, man. They could have worked these deals out long before now, as these cats were kind of coming up the ranks. Because I remember telling somebody several years ago that Tatum and Brown were going to be in this position. And they're like, no, man, they ain't nowhere near that. And sure enough, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Those two together, they're a good 1-2 punch. But as we see now, with that 1-2 punch, they're having a tough time with the Philadelphia 76ers. So you're going to have to put something else around them. And unless you're going to just do it like, let's run it back. You keep everybody that you have. You don't change a thing. That's the only way it's close to possible. Only way it's close to possible.
Right. And then, last time I checked, I don't see a 2010 to 2013 LeBron James on that roster.
No, they don't have that. But at any given moment, man, Tatum or Brown can go off. Now, here's the one caveat I will give them: the coaching change. The fact that they went from Udoka, who was in his first season. A lot of folks, just kind of put them in this upper echelon because he got them to the finals in his first season. But they're literally on their second coach in 2 years. So, the identity is still not defined because there's times when Brown sits back and lets Tatum go. There's time when Tatum sits back and let Brown go. They've got to find a way to make it work from the coach down with those two players and the supporting cast. I don't think they've figured that out yet. So it could be they could have the best 1-2 punch. We just don't know. We haven't seen it yet.
That's true. We'll see what happens, but that's the get it off your chest segment for this episode. And speaking of watching to see what happens, I'm definitely wanting to see what happens with the Houston Texans. Now, everyone saw on that fateful Thursday night what they did. I mean, of course, they went out and got CJ Stroud, but I want to kind of rewind it back before that moment.
Yeah.
The Texans had plenty of questions about the quarterback. I mean, people were leaking out there that they wanted Will Levis. And some weren't even sure they would even draft a quarterback. So how was the mood down there kind of going into everything leading up to the draft?
I got to tell you, I had gotten a little salty. I don't know what everybody else in town was doing, but I was calling it like it was. I said, if Nick Caserio does not draft a quarterback with the number 2 pick in the draft, he's got to go. He has to go. Because if you look at it, he's got the 2 one-and-done coaches on his record, and he's got the last 2 drafts. This would have been draft number 3. So there's no way in the world that he could have swung and missed with this draft. Just couldn't do it. A lot of folks think Cal McNair's dumb. A lot of folks think he's a country bumpkin, and he doesn't know what he's doing. What I do know, if you just pay attention, when Cal gets fed up, it's a wrap. He will walk in and fire anybody and everybody at a moment's notice. So I said Nick Caserio was on the clock. Forget the quarterback, forget the defensive player, forget DeMeco Ryans. Nick Caserio was on the clock, and if he blew it, he was going to be gone.
Yeah, definitely. I could get that sense because to me, he's actually living on borrowed time because he's, one and done coach 2 years in a row, and the roster hasn't necessarily developed to a level. So, in my opinion, I think he was on the
rent a roster. It's been rent a roster. I mean, he's been going out and signing these guys on these one and done deals and that kind of stuff. And again, that was okay under David Culley. That was okay under Lovie Smith. That was not okay under DeMeco Ryans. And I coined the phrase, this was the DeMeco Ryans effect. They had to give DeMeco Ryans more than they gave Culley and more than they gave Lovie. They had to do it, or else it was going to start from the top down.
Right. Now, speaking of giving him more, they definitely did that at the quarterback position because if they went out there with Davis Mills again, it would have been a lot of booing and a lot of sad singing and flower bringing with all the losses that may have probably followed. But they did go out and get CJ Stroud, quarterback from Ohio State, the guy that I said is the most talented quarterback in this draft, in my opinion.
I heard you say that on Brothers by a Different. Yeah, I heard you say that. I was like, okay, all right, I like it.
Yeah, he definitely was. The brother from another. That was definitely they allowed me to kind of go off a little bit in terms of in a good way for the Texans. So, what was your immediate reaction when the Texans drafted CJ Stroud at number 2?
It was the right pick. And I can't say that I covered CJ Stroud in college. I mean, high school, I didn't. But the minute he set foot on the campus at The Ohio State University, I covered him. And the young man was what you said he was. He was the most NFL pro-ready out of the draft. He is the guy who could start day one. I'm not saying he's going to win day one. A lot of folks think starting equals winning. No, it doesn't, especially when you got a young quarterback. Go back and look at Peyton Manning's starting record. Go back and look at other quarterbacks that have started right out of college in the pros and look at their record. So he is the guy that is most pro ready, and he played in a pro style offense a good portion of the time. Yeah, they ran the RPO. Yeah, they ran the spread and all that. But he did a whole lot of pro things that needed to be done, and he'll be ready to do first weekend, second weekend in September.
Definitely. I was very kind of nervous for them, nervous for the Texans fans just going into that. But I know a nice breath of a sigh of relief, I should say, was breathed when CJ Stroud was drafted. Now, that didn't stop the excitement, though. The excitement really happened right after that. They thought the Texans would be drafting number 11, 12, but they just decided, okay, cool, we're going to go after what we want. So what they did was they took and traded their second-round pick. They traded their first and third in 2024 for the third overall pick, which became Mr. Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama. Now, to me, and I've said, the Texans needed someone to rush the passer. Jerry Hughes Jr. is not going to be a guy you can be like, okay, cool, give me 10 sacks. I mean, he's kind of long in the tooth at this point. So you needed some young, energetic, someone young and energetic to put in that position and enter Will Anderson. Now, some think he's going to be better than what he was as a collegiate. Some think he may not be as great in the pros, which is an interesting thing to talk about, with the best defensive player or supposed best defensive player in the draft. What are your thoughts about Will Anderson Jr.?
Let me put it to you like this. When they drafted CJ Stroud, I did the Holy Ghost shout, thank you. But when they drafted Will Anderson at number 3, I did that Holy Ghost dance. I was like, oh, look at him now. They come on here. So to get a player like that under a coach like DeMeco Ryans, who has a proven track record of developing talent that most folks did not think could reach the level that they ultimately reached, this was the perfect pick. I have more confidence in DeMeco Ryans' ability matched with Will Anderson's talent than anything, because DeMeco can help that young man do things he might not have been allowed to do at Alabama. He is going to have an ability to do some things from one of the best to ever play the game in his position here in Houston. Now, let me qualify all of that, because he was the man in Houston at the linebacker spot. A lot of folks didn't think J.J. Watt could do what he did coming out of Wisconsin, and look what he turned out to be. So until I see him bust, my hopes are high for that connection between Coach DeMeco Ryans, who is a defensive-minded coach, who has developed players, who has turned them into Pro Bowl players, and I think he can do the same thing with Will Anderson on that edge.
Okay, now one thing I want to ask, and I think it's a fair point to ask. They gave up a lot for Will Anderson. Do you think that maybe they gave up too much for him, or do you think, hey, you got to do what you got to do to get the best players?
That's it for me right here. I mean, you got to understand, this is Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have been conservative for a long time. What has it gotten them? They've won a couple of AFC South championships. That's like a district title. That's not even state, bro. That's like district. So if they're going to take that next step, guess what? You got to do stuff like this. You just have to do stuff like this. If you don't do things like this, then you are settling for what you've always had. And I'm sorry, if you don't shoot high and you hit low, you're going to be lower than where you thought you were going to be in the first place.
I hear you there. Just wanted to touch on, the two big exciting moves, but there was another exciting move that happened in this draft. But we're going to talk about that right after commercial break. You're watching Tour in the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
Whether it's local or long distance, Milligan Logistics has you covered. Milligan Logistics was established in 2020 with over a combined 15 years of experience in trucking, hauling, and logistics, along with over 50 years collectively of project management experience. Again, whether it's near or far, Milligan Logistics has you covered with quality service, efficiency while taking pleasure in exceeding clients' expectations. Need goods moved short or long distance? Milligan Logistics has you covered. Just reach out to them at 615-354-2618. That's 615-354-2618. Or you can send them an email at milliganlogistics@gmail.com. And again, that's milliganlogistics@gmail.com.
All right, and we are back. Now, I mentioned there was a player that was, picked up that, generated a good bit of excitement. And what I didn't mention, though, is that he is at a position of need for the Houston Texans. That would be Houston wide receiver Tank Dell. Yes.
Yeah.
He is a new member of the Houston Texans. Now, he's staying home. He basically just got robbed up the street.
Yep.
So what did you think of that addition to kind of give Stroud another weapon to work with? Of course, we do have, you can't rule out, you got John Mechie III coming back. You got Dallas Schultz at tight end, which is way better than their tight end position last year.
Yep.
You do have a security blanket, perhaps, in Robert Woods. So what did you think of this addition to the team in addition to what all they put out there?
Man, again, you got a playmaker. You got a young man who can make and break plays. And think about what they gave up. They gave up Brandon Cooks, small, kind of stout, wide receiver who could make plays, who could stretch the field a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit enough. You've got that in Tank, and you've got a special teamer. You got a guy who can make plays on punt returns, kickoff returns, wherever you want to put him back there. So you really have a multi-dimensional playmaker with a young man who is right there at home, man. Great pick. And it filled the need. Great pick.
Yeah, definitely filled the need, and definitely gives you a guy that can scare opposing defenses and maybe back them up as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So definitely a good addition. Now, I will say they have one of the, the Texans, of course, have one of the worst wide receiver cores in football last year. So that's not to be mentioned. So, with these additions, what does this do for Nico Collins? I wanted to ask that one real quick. I forgot to mention that for him.
I was out there training camp last year, and I kept waiting for Nico to be Nico, to separate himself from the defenders and from the rest of the wide receivers. He never really did that. He had flashes during the season, but again, he never really turned into that, wide receiver one. I think it just turns up heat. I think it puts pressure on him. And he's going to have to put up, or guess what? This new administration doesn't have a relationship with him. So, there's nothing beholding to him to, make them have to put him out there. He's got a great opportunity, because when you talk about Woods and you talk about, Schultz and some of the other additions, he would be a very good weapon to have out there. And then you sprinkle Tank in there in the slot and some other positions. Man, I hope he steps up. He's a great guy. I'm not saying that to minimize his ability. He's got the ability to write his own ticket. He's just got to step up and do it.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when it comes to time to put up or shut up, as you say.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't the only wide receiver that they drafted. They did draft Iowa State wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson as well to compete.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on him? And have you been able to kind of see him out there yet, or have they've done a few things yet?
No, rookie camp starts tomorrow. Tomorrow and through Saturday. So here's the thing, but I did follow the Big 12. And what I can say about him is whatever ills that the Texans had in the red zone and on the goal line, he can help fix those, because he literally has the ability to go up and get the high top, the 50-50 ball. He's got the ability to make some plays over some of the smaller defensive backs. So they now have, again, somebody that CJ Stroud can get comfortable with and throw that ball up there and make some things happen.
That's definitely a good thing for CJ Stroud. They did add a few other things as well. But I've got to ask, out of the rest of their draft picks, now I'm going to go over those for those that aren't aware of their draft picks. So that way, you can kind of be on the same page as me and AJ. But they have guard Juice Shrugs, I'm sorry, from Scruggs from Penn State. I'm having a moment pronouncing his name. But of course we mentioned Tank Dell, wide receiver from Houston. Now we have Dylan Horton, defensive end from TCU. You've got Henry Tuo, linebacker from Alabama. Got Jared Patterson, center from Notre Dame. Xavier Hutchinson, wide receiver from Iowa State. And Brandon Hill, DB from Pittsburgh. Now, out of all those picks, which one do you think could be a potentially sneaky good pick for them?
I'll tell you right now, I expect Juice to be the day one starter at center. I expect him to be the day one starter at center because getting him gave them the opportunity to move some of the players that they have. They just re-signed Shaq Mason, 3-year, $36 million deal. They now have the ability to kind of move some things outward because you needed somebody to solidify that middle right there in the center. If Scruggs can hold that down, they're going to give him a shot. If he can hold that down and be the day one starter, that line just got a whole lot better. And what do you want with a young quarterback who's got an arm, who can make some plays? You want a line that's going to give him some time. So I think that's what they got in Scruggs. Now, a lot of folks look down at the center from Notre Dame. Guess what? Scruggs is a beast. He can not only get the ball back in time, but he can put his paws on some people and push them out of the way. And the Texans did have a very nice running game with Dameon Pierce. So, again, you got somebody who I think is going to be a surprise pick for a lot of people when they see how he can play.
All right. Now, that brings me to my next question. The worst pick of the draft, which, to be honest, thinking about this, and I thought long and hard about this one, you actually harped on something that I thought was a bad pick.
Mm-hmm.
That would be Jared Patterson. I'm trying to figure out, if you have your center in Scruggs, why are you picking up Patterson? He really... to me, I get depth. But I'm just to me,
look at where they got him. They got him in the 6th round. So it's like you're walking out of the store, you got all your stuff, and they're hanging right by your side is something that you don't need, but you want. So let me go ahead and get it. Let me just go ahead. Yeah, put this on my bill too. I feel like they know that the line has been makeshift. Again, Nick Caserio has been doing rent a roster. And, that hadn't always worked out on the offensive line. You need people who can actually, fill the spot and then play the spot. And I think that they're thinking that this is a young man they feel like they can put maybe a guard every now and then. I don't know so much about tackle, but he can definitely play the center spot. So that gives them some options from 1, 2, 3 gaps.
Okay. All right. Well, you kind of convinced me there, even though I still think that they could have probably used that on another cornerback to help out in depth there, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I agree with you because that gets to the other elephant in the room for the Texans. What are they going to get out of Stingley this year? Now, I didn't say which Stingley's going to show up because I think that's a crazy little adage that somebody put out there that's way overused. What are they going to get out of Stingley this year? Is he going to be the player that he was in his freshman year at LSU? He had flashes of that, but again, had injuries, had things that kind of kept him out of the starting lineup. So if he can hold it down with what they got from some of the other guys, that helps them. And I think they're banking on that.
Well, we're definitely going to see because, I like you, saw Stingley and how great he was his freshman year, and I still haven't seen the same player since. So that's where I'm like, I don't know if I would have drafted him that high. And I will say this, if DeMeco Ryans was the coach last year, I don't think he drafts him that high, to be honest.
Right. Well, and again, that's why I say the DeMeco Ryans effect caused Nick Caserio to have to do a doggone good job. He had to draft not just need, but best available in that need. So when he took CJ Stroud, when they took Anderson, when they got Juice, when they got Tank, you saw something that we haven't seen here in Houston since the days of Rick Smith. We haven't had a general manager, do that kind of cerebral drafting and it have the possibility to be exactly what they need on a higher level. So yeah, that DeMeco Ryan effect is for real. I don't think they would have taken Stingley that high either had it been DeMeco.
Gotcha. Now, overall, what were your thoughts on just the draft of the Texans this year?
It's funny you say that because I did rate it myself. Me and Pete Prisco, if we was in the same room, we'd be in the octagon because he gave the Texans a low grade, and all because he did not like CJ Stroud. He wanted Will Levis to go at that number 2 spot. For me, I gave him a solid A-, B+ because, like I said, they filled the need and they got some of the best available players at those needs.
Okay. All right. Well, I tend more to agree with you than Pete Prisco, but we'll talk about that off air in terms of that. Those different things. But of course, we have reached the end of the show talking about the Houston Texans, but we aren't done yet. There's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 question. You're in the hot seat for 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Tank Dell, best rookie wide receiver in the AFC South, or are you taking the field?
Woo! Take the field.
All right. Yeah. I actually asked the Indianapolis Colts that about Josh Downs in terms of the draft recap there.
Mm-hmm.
Megan Hall and Drake, they both took the field too. So hey, there we go. All right. Will Anderson Jr. over or under 7 sacks for the Houston Texans next year?
I'm gonna go over. Not much over. Not much over. If he gets 8, I'm over. So yeah, I'll go over.
Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna give you a little bit of a question in terms of hip hop culture in Houston.
Okay.
Bun B or Paul Wall? Which
Bun
one
B.
would you think
Bun B.
is the oh, you just gonna not even listen to the question?
Look, whatever it is, it's got to be Bun. Paul Wall. Go ahead. I'm sorry, my bad. Go ahead and finish it up. Bun, I'm your boy, man. I'm your boy, Bun.
Which one is the bigger Texans fan?
Oh, Bun B. Bun B.
All right. Well, I know you were gonna ride with Bun B from the beginning. Funny fact: the first concert I ever went to, UGK concert when I was in high school. Yeah.
You started off right. You got started right. Look, did it go up or down from there for you?
Man, it was interesting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now Papados or Whataburger or In-N-Out if you want to put In-N-Out in there.
Oh man, they gonna be mad at me, man. I know Whataburger is the local flavor and that, but I love In-N-Out, bro. I just love In-N-Out.
Okay. All right. Well, I would say this. I like In-N-Out more than I like Whataburger. I went to Santa Clara and actually ate In-N-Out, and I was like, oh, this is great. Whataburger, it kind of reminds me of a grown version of the McDonald's cheeseburgers. That's what it reminds me of. Every time I look at it and eat it, I'm just like, nah, I'm just not with it.
Let me just say this though. The patty melt at Whataburger, nothing touches that. But everything else, I'm going In-N-Out.
Okay. All right. And the last one. The Houston Texans 2023 AFC South champions. Is it possible or more impossible in your opinion?
It's possible because I don't see a team that's going to run away with it. So it's possible. It's probably not probable.
Okay. All right. Well, possible, not probable. Okay. All right. Throw a little rhyming in for us. Okay. I thought you were gonna give us a hot 16 for a minute there. But no. I'm kidding. But yeah, that's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. And yeah, you're off the hot seat. Ooh. But I want to thank you again for coming on the show, giving us a little breakdown of the Houston Texans, their draft, and all things going on around that team. If you want, you can actually give everyone your information where they can find you on social media and what all you're working on.
Appreciate you, man. You can find me at Jones Media _ENT on Twitter. And then everywhere else, it's at Jones Media and ENT. Man, working on a lot. Working on a lot. We've got a documentary that we put together for an athlete. I've been working on it for a while. Dr. Sharifa Barksdale. We got a big meeting coming up. So, brother, if you don't mind, because that's where the money resides. So if once we get that, we'll be rolling. Plus, I've got a group that I work with called the Cinematic Affair. They've got a big premiere coming up in July. And then keep an eye on BS3. We got some things that we're about to do on the movie TV side. And I'm really excited about that. So, man, just doing some great things with JM&E. A little company doing big things.
Well, there we go. Hey, it all starts with a dream, right?
Absolutely.
Now, the biggest thing is turning it into a reality, which I see you're putting in the work to do so.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and doing it under the surface. I ain't promoting a whole lot, just staying under the surface.
Well, there you go. Hey, the best things surprise people, right?
That's it.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. I'm just running out of places. Okay, YouTube. You can find it there too if you want to see our smiling faces, in the flesh as well. But yeah, you can definitely do that. You can find me on Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton82. You can find me on Instagram at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. Thank you all again for tuning in. You have been watching Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.